Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigland Network show. My name is Emma Vigland, and you know what to do, everybody. Subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications, rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening to this on all podcast platforms. And if you're watching live, please like the stream. Make my broken heart heal. Hello, Bradley. Yeah.
Hello.
I'm really bummed out about this Rangers collapse. We'll talk about that in just a second, but we will be previewing the NBA and NHL finals. At least it was to a worthy opponent. I called it, I think, pretty well. I was very nervous about the Panthers and not so much about the Hurricanes. Yeah, Bradley, how you doing? I know you had a long move, so
I did, but I'm honest. I'm doing okay. I have the most of my burdensome move behind me.
Oh, that's good. Do you have to unpack or anything like that?
Well, we sort of did that over the week because I moved Friday, so sort of my wife and I took the weekend to my wife and I took more time over Saturday and Sunday to kind of unpack and get settled and everything. But yeah, I'm feeling good.
All right. Well, I mean, let's.
I'm sharing. I'm trying to share some of the
I know,
here.
But that's bad broadcasting. I just can't, for me at least, I just can't get out of my own way in terms of, like, if I start to think about sports, I get this wave of sadness. I started Hacks on HBO or Max or whatever because I was like,
Hacks on Max.
I really need a new show if I'm gonna survive the having no more New York Rangers to watch. Pretty good so far, but then I remembered that on Mondays I do this sports show where I have to talk about it, so let's do that, and I'm completely sober as I do it. Anyway, so let's start with the NHL just because we're already here. Obviously, the New York Rangers lost to the Florida Panthers in a Game 6 in Sunrise. Vladimir Tarasenko, who the Rangers had acquired last season at the trade deadline for a postseason run, ended up basically having the game-winning goal. The Rangers lost 2-1. They were shut out until the very final minutes in a 6-on-5 when they were able to get one goal in that game. But the Rangers were broken offensively. They went cold, and if you can hear that, there's a little dog in the hallway saying, what's wrong with me because of Banajad? Yeah. Sometimes that particular dog actually bedevils us. But anyway, so the Rangers went cold offensively. Mika Zibanejad had some really good, I think, plays in this series on the penalty kill and other strong defensive plays, but at times had crazy turnovers trying to do cross-ice passes. And the Panthers did a phenomenal job of disrupting the ability to set plays up, making Panarin have a very difficult time having the space that he needed because they're such a strong forechecking team, which was my ultimate fear about this series. They were successful in that. Alexander Barkov is one of the best players in the world right now, just like from an all-around hockey sense, both offensively and defensively. He has stifled every line that he's played on thus far in this series. I think he was lined up against Bergeron in the Bruins series, as well as Kucherov in the Lightning series, where the Panthers were surprisingly dominant. So the biggest problem really for the Rangers is that they don't have more guys like Vincent Trocheck, who was the best player all playoffs. The Panthers have like 6 guys like that. Just, I would say, Alexis Lafreniere has the ability to play that way, but tough but skilled, great at creating chaos in front of the net. You thought that Kreider could be that guy, but he was really unable to tip shots in because the quarterback of the power play, Adam Fox, has been playing on one leg ever since midway through that Carolina Hurricane series. So I just think in terms of what the Rangers do going forward, they need more physicality from their forward group, but not in like a stupid way, in the way that they thought that they could get more physicality by having Jacob Trouba be their captain, who has gotten exposed throughout this series as a terrible defender. The analytics showed that. He has the ability to block shots on the penalty kill. That is not worth $8 million a year. And I've been a defender of his play in the past, but as he's gotten older and slower, if possible, that has kind of made itself a little bit more clear. But the Florida Panthers are a phenomenal team. I think they're going to win the cup. I'll just say that right now. I know that the Oilers have the best player in the world, and he made himself known in that game yesterday, and then the Oilers had to hold on to defeat the Stars. But the Panthers are as well built as you possibly could be from that perspective, and they have a style of play that, as I said to start the series, is just extremely hard to play against, and that skill as well, and a goaltender that at times has, he's a little more streaky, but he can be one of the best players on the ice. It gives them a real shot. Any thoughts on that, Bradley?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like unfortunately the end of this Panthers-Rangers series kind of circled around a few of the things that we had been talking about throughout the last few weeks of, like, middling play by guys like Jacob Trouba and Keandre Miller, as well as kind of not enough, thrust or kind of not enough explosive or kind of game-changing play from the guys who are sort of on the Rangers side of things, tasked with those types of plays and types of those players capitalizing in those types of situations, and I'm referring to Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad in that regard, because honestly, I think this was a real coming out party, as we were talking about last week. But like, I'm really impressed with how Alexis Lafreniere played, especially after many, as we've been talking about. Some people even thought maybe that it was time to almost pull the ripcord on him as a prospect.
Idiots thought that.
Whereas he, really showed himself to be worthy of his number one overall pick designation, in my view, in this series. But
let alone, I mean, I'm sorry, like idiots like that, he's also cost controlled. Do people not realize that there is a salary cap, and that you, specifically in the NHL, it is so depressed because the owners are like, think about, if you want to be a cheap franchise owner, you're going to go for the lowest hanging fruit and not spend any money. That's what NHL owners are about. And Dolan would spend more on the Rangers if he could, let's be real, because it's quite cheap to run a freaking hockey team with the amount of money that gets charged to go see a game at Madison Square Garden. But the idiots thought that. Idiots thought that. Because cost control is everything in NHL, that also has a collective bargaining agreement for players that shuttles them into restricted free agency, which limits their bargaining power. So I'm sorry. Go on.
No, but I think that's a good point, is well taken. I think that, fortunately, obviously, that those voices were not listened to, given how well he's played in this postseason. What I obviously think is we've been discussing too. The postmortems, I think, amongst Rangers faithful have kind of revolved around some of like, who should be retained, who may leave, who should leave, those types of recriminations that become kind of customary after a playoff loss like this. But I will say, we were talking about this before the show, but not to compare the two teams, but I just think that in leagues, in professional leagues, where obviously it is very difficult to get back to where you were when you do capitalize on some postseason success, the Panthers were the number 8 seed in the playoffs last season and made it to the Stanley Cup, and they were the number 1 seed in this Stanley Cup and made it to the Stanley Cup again. So I think it's possible that success in this context, there is a potential for success to be replicated. So I wouldn't look too negatively into the future for the Rangers because of how well they ultimately did play, with some clear things to work on.
Yeah,
and also running into the Panthers, who kind of were able to really exploit the weaknesses of the Rangers, was a hard.
It's just annoying that the weaknesses of the Rangers are very similar in these postseasons. Yeah, which is Zibanejad becoming a ghost, Panarin becoming a ghost, and the problem. I mean, Trocheck was a good improvement, but they need.
But Trocheck couldn't be the only focal point.
Tkachuk wasn't even. Tkachuk was on an all-world, like, playing at an insane pace last year, and then he got injured, and that was part of why they lost in the finals to the Golden Knights.
Right.
he's played well this postseason, not the same level. It's more been like the Barkov and Bennett show, I would say, for the Panthers.
And Reinhart, honestly.
And Reinhart, yeah.
The two Sams.
But again, that just goes to show how talented they are and how big they are and fast and talented they are. But Kachuk changed that culture, and his style of play became their style of play. And that's something that the Rangers need to do, and it doesn't happen, every other day that you get a player like him. So it's so much easier said than done. But it's not Jacob Trouba, who there are some teams that could eat that salary cap, and I will be praying that that's what happens, and we have a new captain on the New York Rangers next season. But and also that's part of what I would say about Keandre Miller is Miller was stuck on that pair with him because they put Miller down on the third pairing with Gustafsson, and it was just as terrible. And even worse, they were generating less. So for Keandre Miller's career sake, they need to move on from Jacob Trouba because that's the only player they seem to be able to trust him with in pairings. I've talked very little about the Panthers, but that's really all I've got for that series. It's just we'll be talking about the Panthers more in the context in a second of their matchup against the Oilers. But the Stars, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. I gotta feel even for their fans more, although it's probably a little bit the blow is a little lessened by the fact that the Mavericks are in the postseason, or in the finals. But the Stars made it to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in 2 years, and they lost that game. They were up 2-1 over the Edmonton Oilers. But as I was saying, after they went 7 games against the damn Golden Knights, it's going to be quite difficult to sustain this level of play after they had a series like that. And sometimes injuries just catch up with you in those situations. So
it would have kind of been a pretty almost, I would say, borderline historical run to the Stanley Cup if the Stars were able to successfully dispatch the reigning Stanley Cup champions in the first round, defeat the Stanley Cup champion from 2 seasons ago, and then beat literally the team with the best player in hockey to get to the Stanley Cup. So I still think it was a great showing by them, but I can definitely understand the frustration because they've been this close before.
And you just see how in the postseason, things like, not scoring once on the power play in a series is going to affect
lethal,
you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what happened with the Stars. They were 0 for 14. The Oilers had struggled for a while, and then they made some adjustments, and they eventually took advantage later in the series and scored on the power play. But Joe Pavelski may have played his last game as a professional hockey player. Who knows what's going to happen? I think with Tyler Seguin. The Oilers started out with a strategy of trying to kind of minimize shots on Jeff Skinner. I'm sorry, Jesus, I do this every time. Stuart Skinner, who, is their biggest liability by a long mile. And he played admirably. I saw people mocking the Stars for getting goalied by Skinner in the Western Conference Finals in an elimination game, but that's how it ended up going. Because the Stars did come out swinging in this game, knowing that they, much like the Rangers who had early chances in the first period, they came out with energy knowing that this was an elimination game for them. And in the end, the Oilers were outshot in this game, but in the first period, Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, both scorers. Tell me where you've heard that before this season. Basically, every single game, it's Connor McDavid to Zach Hyman, or Zach Hyman's getting a point, or Connor McDavid scoring, or setting up somebody else.
Which is, I think we've been saying, is that literally has been, it seems simple, but that's literally been what has put this Oilers team over the edge, is just having literally 1 to 2 other guys to rely on to do anything in terms of scoring and playmaking outside of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. If Evan Bouchard or Zach Hyman score a goal, it's pretty hard to beat the Oilers, just because
yes,
if you're getting any sort of positive production from guys in that vein, or even a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, a very long-tenured Oiler who just has not lit up the score sheet as much as obviously many of his now contemporaries on the team. But if any of those guys are getting in the stat sheet, it's pretty hard to beat them.
And Draisaitl has had a phenomenal, just postseason as well. He's played really well. I think you mentioned Bouchard there. Evander Kane, he hasn't been good defensively, but at the very least, he's kind of provided them with some scoring upside. But you see when you just look at the skater like stat sheets that the Oilers are incredibly top heavy. And that's why I'm taking the Panthers. I think the Panthers win in 5 or 6. And I don't know if that is like just bias but I really do think that the Rangers would have beaten the Oilers, and I think that the Panthers would have beaten the Oilers. But I've underestimated the Oilers all season, and is the NHL like, is Connor McDavid a good enough superstar to transcend what is kind of the statistical pattern of being an NHL championship team, which means getting scoring from your bottom 6 and having the depth that you need to, and having elite goaltending, which is the conventional wisdom.
And that is obviously going to go in the Panthers' favor in a like Skinner-Bobrovsky matchup, obviously.
Yes. I mean, and Bobrovsky has done, Bobrovsky is a tenured veteran at this point, and he's put in his dues. And do I think that he's going to allow Stuart Skinner to out-goalie him? I don't think so. So I do think that the Panthers win this, and they will have deserved it. I've been saying this all year. They are a juggernaut.
And I think, as you're saying, the prediction rests upon whether we think this will be a Connor McDavid coronation, where even despite an inferior team, he has enough skill and enough within himself, enough gravity to basically command enough attention that his team can hopefully capitalize on, and that over leveraging, paying attention to McDavid can potentially lead to mistakes on other places. However, that runs up against probably the best all-around team in terms of depth, scheme, and like understanding of each other as players.
Yes.
In the Panthers.
And identity.
Because we've seen in a number of games where basically someone either like Sam Reinhart or someone like Sam Bennett, someone like Carter Verhaeghe, guys who are notably not Matthew Tkachuk, take over the game. And meaning that if one of those, or if it's a game where Barkov takes over a game as opposed to Tkachuk, or vice versa, that there are so many outlets for players who are not necessarily who you would consider their stars, but are extremely valuable players in their own right, taking over and kind of commandeering games where it's harder to find who that might be for the Oilers as much.
Yes.
They have Bouchard and they have Hyman. They have Hyman kind of operating on a higher, caliber than they have in the past. But the list gets shorter once you get past those two guys, whereas the list almost like doesn't end for the Panthers.
And it's difficult for me to, and I also just look at the defensive depth of the Oilers, and I compare it to like the top end defensive talent that like Bouchard has had a really good postseason, as has Ekholm. But in terms of like the bottom 2 pairs, I'm going to take the defensive depth of the Panthers over that. I take their depth at forwards as well, and I take their goaltending. And so that is really where I'm going here. So I'm thinking 5-6 games, but I've been wrong a lot, not about the East, but I've been more wrong about the West because I don't watch enough of enough hockey outside of really kind of playoff games there. So sometimes I will if I have a little wager on it, but yeah.
I think your prediction makes sense. I think the only thing that would stifle it is just us seeing like Connor McDavid basically capable of taking over a series in a way where his singular talents exceed any sort of team cohesion. But that would be extraordinary. And honestly, I wouldn't even be mad to see it necessarily because it would be an extraordinary thing to withhold.
Oh, yeah.
But I would also obviously be happy to see how a really well-run, well-structured, well-oiled team, pun intended, can capitalize on and be rewarded for that kind of dynamic, that kind of that foundation in the Panthers with a finally winning a Stanley Cup.
That would be very cool. So let's turn to the NBA here. We have basically known who's gonna be in the finals for quite a while at this point, with the sweep that the Celtics did and over the Pacers and the gentleman's sweep that the Mavericks had over the Minnesota Timberwolves. I guess let's break it down like this because I'm sure people are aware of the stars involved. We've got Kyrie, we've got Luka on one side, we've got Jason Tatum, we've got Jaylen Brown, we've got Kristaps Porzingis, who is apparently ramping up at practice for the Boston Celtics. Some of the stuff that I want people to look out for, I think, in this series, which starts on Thursday, is can other Mavericks players make a difference as a two-way threat here? Because the difference, I think, that people should be looking out for, or one of the inflection points, is, Luka and Kyrie, there's really no questions about them offensively. They are going to be the top scorers. They're going to be playing the most important offensive minutes for the Dallas Mavericks. But outside of these like offensive superstars, can the Mavericks play both sound defensively, which we know that they have some good defenders, but be able to score to supplement that? Because we know that the Celtics have a lot of versatility in terms of defense. Like they can put they can put a bunch of different guys, and they have one of the better defenders in Drew Holiday that they can send on to those phenomenal offensive players. So can the Mavericks basically have the ability to be versatile and score in different ways? That's something that we need to be looking out for, as well as like the health of each center. Al Horford's age, I know that there were some NBA analytics that observed that basically Al Horford was picked on a lot in the last series by the Pacers and targeted from his defensive perspective, trying to get some of their guys on, and as a mismatch with Al Horford. Or can Jason Kidd and the Mavs find a way to exploit that by putting Al Horford in uncomfortable situations from a defensive perspective? And is Kristaps Porzingis going to be able to do that? Can they create mismatches with him just from getting, his size up against the speed of another player? Those are some of the things I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah, I think if I'm the Celtics, I probably want to do my absolute. If I'm the Celtics coaching staff, I want to do my absolute best to not allow the potential for what did happen a few times in the Pacers series, where basically a number of smaller guards or wing players were just getting switched. Horford was getting switched onto them at the elbow, and they were just draining jumper after jumper over him. And so I think if there's a way for them, maybe with Porzingis more available, this is possible, that there just won't be as much action, or there will be multiple screening actions on their end of things to make it so that Horford does not constantly get put in that position, that they can try and kind of keep him on the floor in a way where he's not going to be gravitating towards either one of the elbows to get to a point where Luka and Kyrie are just basically shaking him up to then score over him.
Right.
And then on the other end of things, I think what the Celtics will want to do ideally on defense is, if Porzingis is healthy, it's a bit of a taller order if Derek Lively is fully ready to go and can play, because I actually think he can, maybe just because of his youth, he's only 20 years old.
He is a rookie, unbelievably.
And if he can get in there and kind of capably defend Porzingis in space, obviously even just seeing if that's possible, in the sense that, is Porzingis going to punish Lively in that position if Lively is healthy and playing that, and does somehow get switched onto the perimeter where Lively's most likely going to have to actually defend Porzingis potentially one-on-one behind the three-point line. I think that's maybe.
Well, how about Gafford? That's also something interesting too, where like if Lively's not up for the task, or if they see a better option with Porzingis, they can flip those guys.
I think proverbially the Celtics could see blood in the water with Gafford in that regard, because Gafford is on both ends of the floor.
Yes.
He's efficient offensively for this very reason, but he is a around the rim guy.
Yep.
He does not I don't think he will be as impactful defending in space against Porzingis with Porzingis' handle and ability to shoot threes.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to have to figure out who best to guard Porzingis in that situation, also knowing that essentially to begin with, the Celtics are just basically going to want to play 5-out shooters.
Oh, well,
they're going to want to just be completely around the perimeter, shooting threes, and if that stops working, then maybe go to Tatum to drive into the lane and draw fouls or get into the paint, but they're going to want to shoot the lights out in this series.
The postseason, there was some postseason stat I saw that the Celtics are 7-0 when they are able to complete to have 15 or more threes. And that makes a lot of sense because if you're shooting at that rate, that's going to correlate highly with winning. But it just goes to show that that is a big part of like their regular season success and their postseason success, although they've only lost one game in the postseason? Did they only lose? So they only lost once to the Heat.
Yep. They swept. If I'm not mistaken, I think they swept the Heat. Lost one to the.
No, they
Cavs.
Lost once to the Heat. They lost once to the Heat. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, so maybe it was two games. So yeah, one to the Heat, one to the Cavs,
to the Cavs,
to the Pacers.
Yeah, I think they lost both game ones, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll double check.
Gosh. Too much information in my brain, but
yeah, it's also been that's I forgot the Celtics played the Heat fully.
Yeah,
I thought the Cavs series was a first round matchup for a few weeks, and I was like, oh right, the Heat played. Right.
Yeah,
but no Jimmy
really
Butler, so it was a
I know they lost 2 games though. I know they did.
Ceremonial series basically.
Right,
Jimmy Butler.
Right, but anyway, so it'll also be interesting too what they decide to do with defending Luka Doncic because it seems like they in the regular season they'd apparently use Jaylen Brown to defend Kyrie Irving. It also seems like they could probably put Holiday on him if they need to, but Luka is such a big guy. And do they have the physicality on defense and size that they can use to defend him?
Right, making him uncomfortable, kind of, even if he gets to his spots, just sort of making it more difficult for him to rise up and make and get into his like crisp shooting motion, which is high too because he has a high release, mostly because even for 6'7", he's I think listed at 6'7", but sometimes I think he is taller than that, or almost just like plays taller than 6'7".
Oh, both game twos they lost.
Yes, yeah, it looks like people in the chat are saying
okay,
both
gotcha.
game twos. Yeah, if they can sort of disrupt his shooting motion a little bit more without fouling, tall order, I know, but also it is both. I think mostly primarily for Boston on defense, it's just going to be trying their absolute hardest to contain either Kyrie and Luka isos or the 2-man game of whatever Kyrie and Luka are going to be doing. It's obviously that seems obviously elemental, which is like, of course, try and stifle the 2 stars, but that's more difficult because of who we're talking about, just because of how crafty and how skillful both guys are at getting open and also exploiting like tiny avenues of space.
Yeah.
Like Luka can make shots with guys having 2 hands like almost over his eyes. Like he requires so little of a window to make insanely tough shots. And while the size profile is different, that's also what Kyrie Irving does.
And I think the other thing that's exciting about the Mavs is that they are clutch. The reality is just that like Luka and
they come in when it counts.
And they've been tested, even though the last series was relatively easy in terms of the fact that they only lost 1 game, and luckily were able to get Luka Doncic some much needed rest in that regard. They have been clutch as hell, and Kyrie Irving in particular is playing at this like ice in his veins. You can't guard me. I'm gonna hit this corner 3 to lock down this game and have the most clutch possible moments. Like that's magical in its own way, and there have been some who have questioned the mental toughness of the Boston Celtics in the past. Can they overcome that? I mean, there's no illusions about, I think, who the deeper team on paper is.
Yeah, definitely the Celtics for sure.
The Celtics have a phenomenal talent, and they're kind of championship or bust here. I guess so are the Mavs, but they have a little bit more of like less pressure on them because they're such underdogs, and they were the 5 seed.
And because this is Luka's first trip to the finals, also. So like the Celtics have made it the past two out of the past 3 seasons.
Right.
To the finals and lost to the 8th seed Heat last year. I think a lot of it was riding on just of whether they can crystallize and establish themselves as, real-time, legit contenders who not only can compete for championships but win championships.
Yes.
Because any way you slice it, it does not matter how it's done, what the context is, who's there. It matters if you win the championship. Because if the
and
Celtics,
they're set up as well as you possibly could have in terms of their path.
Totally,
out
in
of
the
the
sense
East.
of playing a 5-game series with a Jimmy Butlerless Heat, a 5-game series with a intermittently injured Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell in the second round, and then a series with an intermittently injured Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers for the sweep. They are definitely. They have overwhelmed their competition despite it being less adequate than they are, which is what they should be doing, as I said last week, that this is what you want when you have lower competition in front of you, to basically bulldoze them, and they have. Now they're going against a team that is, Luka or Kyrie are better than basically any player on the team.
And
they
playing
played
any better.
And are playing significantly better too.
They're on heaters right now.
Totally.
They're really hot.
But
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna finish by basically just saying, like, all of those questions of their constitution as a team, as players, whether they're properly rated, overrated, underrated, anywhere in between, all of that gets put to rest if they can win 4 of 7 games. They just literally, if they win the title, all of that becomes basically secondary, because they've done what we have all basically thought in one way or another that they're not actually capable of doing.
Yeah.
So all those people get shut up regardless,
right?
If they win the title. But they basically just have to show that the inferior opponents translates to defeating and fighting against teams that are more equipped to match up against them.
So, like, the level that you will be rooting for the Mavericks is, what, 10 out of 10? Because that's where I'm at. I still think that the Boston Celtics win in 6. I'll say that now. But
there's a part of me that does not. There's a part of me where I almost have to see it to believe it, that this Celtics team can win a title.
I know. I mean, when I say that, but it's just I would be really mad at myself if I didn't pick the Celtics, who seem to be set up really well.
But on the other hand, I really don't want Jason Kidd as a head coach to win an NBA title.
That does suck. That does suck. I hate Jason Kidd. Abuser.
And if I had to choose between the team that has Kristaps Porzingis and the team that has Jason Kidd, the head coach, it's a tough choice, but I'd still probably want the Celtics to win, honestly, which is a crazy thing for me to say because
you're a New York sports fan.
Because the Celtics are the Celtics. But I think that there's a potential, because of how well Luka and Kyrie have been playing, in the sense that they've actually, in some games, have basically, assumed the apex predator, position on their team and won games almost single-handedly. So I could see this actually potentially going 7 as a result of a real, volcanic performance by both Kyrie and Luka.
Right.
But I think just because the depth is the depth disparity will ultimately fall in the Celtics, fall on the Celtics side of things, because if certain things stop working for Luka and Kyrie, I'm so much more confident in what the Celtics can do when certain things stop working for their players.
Yeah,
because even in games where Jason Tatum was performing really poorly, Jaylen Brown made clear that he could show up and be the response when that happens.
That's depth.
Exactly.
Right.
And to even have guys like, I know they're much lower down in the depth chart, but to have a guy like Peyton Pritchard who can just capably guard point guards and reliably sink out 2 or 3 3-pointers, a guy like Sam Hauser who basically, for some reason, I think honestly, it's potentially a little case of reverse racism, is that, who's this dopey white guy? He is one of the most accurate 3-point shooters in the league by how much volume he takes. Like, not respecting Sam Hauser's shot comes at another team's own peril. So I think that just like when you really need to get something out of guys in kind of unforeseen, unexpected circumstances, the Celtics just have a few more options.
I really like how you identified the one and only case of reverse racism that has ever existed
in the
history of the world,
and also on the Celtics too.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Poetic.
It can only happen in Boston.
All right, so what's your prediction?
I think I will say Celtics in 7 because I want a 7-game series, but I also. This is my prediction of basically a really incredible showing from the Mavs, but ultimately just the Celtics having a little bit more power to them.
Did you see what? Sorry, hold on. I'm trying to find this quote. Yeah, I saw this quote from Mike Breen saying that he will not rule out a triple bang if the NBA Finals is decided by a 3-pointer. The quote is, "If there's an NBA Finals." He said this to the Pardon My Take guys. "If there's an NBA Finals Game 7 that's decided by a 3-pointer, I might lose it completely." So we might get the triple bang if that happens. And Mike Breen is on the call. That's what I want. A
triple bang would be so crazy.
A triple bang from Mike Breen, and I want Kyrie hitting it in Boston, Game 7. Is that too much to ask for?
But that means you think the Mavs are gonna win.
I don't think so. That's saying that's what I want. That's my desire.
Yeah.
Yes.
I see.
And I want the Mike Breen triple bang with a corner 3 from Kyrie with time expiring. Please, script writers, get it done.
Predictions go out the window if something like that happens. Honestly.
Yes, I don't care about my predictions. What is this? Our betting competition during the NFL?
Right.
That's when I care.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Now it's back for me time to care about the Giants again. Speaking of the NFL, let's touch on this.
And the Mets
here.
are like the most embarrassing and worst team in the entire league.
Oh, please. Baseball doesn't exist.
Yeah, no.
When Sam was saying how he might have renounced his Celtics fandom, I'm such a fair weather, like, I don't really care Mets fan. It was more like my stepbrother is really into it, and when he was living closer to home, we were chatting about it a lot, and now he's in school and away, and like I don't care that much.
I'm just like, especially after the Rangers lost.
Yeah.
So a few people I'm friendly with who are big Rangers and Mets fans are like, I was just commiserating that once hockey and basketball playoffs are over, we're staring down 3 months of the Mets just either losing like 10-4 or 7-6 for literally until September.
Well, I mean, until their
fall.
collapse has been something to behold because they were contending for a championship at some point.
Mortifying.
It's mortifying.
Humiliating.
It's humiliating, and like it really was quite rough that they gave up like that whole core of pitchers, and then you had 2 of them on the Major League Baseball team that won their first championship in their history in the Texas Rangers last year. But yeah,
and yet somehow it's gotten almost more embarrassing since then.
I know, but so my point is just like I could be open to renouncing my Mets fandom. Like, it's just that's the one
Switch could be in order. Yeah,
that's the one that's the lowest. I mean, I would actually sooner be basically executed than renounce my fandom for the Knicks, Rangers, or Giants. That's just too embedded in my brain. But I could be persuaded. About the Mets. So let's talk a little bit of football news here, because this is actually just like some big offseason news here. Justin Jefferson has signed his contract, making him the most expensive, highest paid wide receiver in the NFL at this point, which has consequences for other wide receiver contracts, including Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, just based on the fact that they're both on the same team here,
and CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, although
the stupid Cowboys not paying any of their players who are now going to be like, hey, I want that guy's contract.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, CeeDee Lamb. Okay, let's a quick aside, because you brought up a good point. CeeDee Lamb is not as good as Justin Jefferson.
Oh, no way.
CeeDee Lamb is not as good as Jamar Chase.
No.
But if you look at your numbers, you wouldn't know that.
And not only that, I also just feel like I feel like almost if you're representing a guy like CeeDee Lamb, as you were saying, especially if you're representing a guy like Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, but if you're representing a guy like CeeDee Lamb too, I think you're also just like, if Justin Jefferson can get that money, I can sniff close to it even, at least.
Oh my gosh. But this is last year he had a career year. He had 1,749 receiving yards.
Oh yeah, he was great last year.
He had 12 receiving touchdowns, and he had 135 receptions on 181 targets.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like, that is
That number one wide receiver production.
And in his 4 years with Dallas, he's played 16 games, 16 games, 17 games, and 17 games. So even though he has a slight frame, he's shown durability.
Right. So he's like your star. You're basically your star number one receiver, who's also an Iron Man. Jerry Jones is like, we will figure it out in, I don't know, 6 months.
But they are idiots because if you are a smart team, you are not building, who was their other receiver last year? Seriously. If they're in
Brandon Cooks?
If they're in the right, who underwhelmed. But if they're in the Super Bowl window, why are you guys not distributing the ball a little bit more?
Yeah. Their big free agent, their big offseason acquisition was Zeke Elliott.
The Bengals, who are not an efficient offense, they rely way too much on big plays by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase to T. Higgins or whatever. They still distribute the ball way more than the Cowboys ever did. In a contract year, they fed this guy over and over again.
And he rewarded them.
And now you know what? You guys got to pay up. And it's just I think the drop-off after Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson to CeeDee Lamb is fairly significant. Let's pull up this where we can see how, and I'll give you guys the contract details as we talk about. I think CeeDee Lamb's a really good receiver, but if he's going to ask for more money than Justin Jefferson, that'll be hilarious because Jamar Chase is apparently going to do that. Right. Because they're old buddies from LSU, and they have this competition going about who can get more money. And Justin Jefferson was a year older than him, right? Or came out a year before him, and then Jamar Chase had the COVID year. So they're Jamar Chase, I would imagine, gets extended fairly soon, and it'll be a little bit higher than Justin Jefferson. But these are the numbers in terms of annual, basically, average in terms of salary. So Justin Jefferson at age 25, he just signed this contract that is, it says, as people know, these are all kind of BS numbers, but $140 million at signing. But you see there that the total guaranteed is $110 million, so $30 million of that is not guaranteed. The signing bonus for the first year is nearly $37 million with a $1.1 million base salary. Again, these are just cap machinations, but basically he's going to be making $37 million guaranteed his first year. 2025, $30 million fully guaranteed. 2025, $30 million fully guaranteed. And then it begins to drop off with guarantees. Wait, I said that already. So I'm sorry about that. So no. This is what he gets. Sorry. $37 million signing bonus. Yeah. No, I was right about this before. Let me actually pull up the article as we get talking here. But just to make sure I have it exactly right, his contract details here. Here we go. So he has, $36.9 million signing bonus, and then that will basically act as his salary for the 2024 season. Then next year, $30 million guaranteed. 2026, this is what I missed. He has $24.99, so nearly $25 million guaranteed for injury at signing, and that's only $18 million of that is fully guaranteed. The rest of it is delayed and it's guaranteed, but basically it's $25 million guaranteed. And then he has a base salary in 2027 of $29.25 million guaranteed, 14.2-ish million is guaranteed for injury, and then there's a full guarantee after the season. So it's a really significant deal for a non-quarterback. Now, you'll see there that now Justin Jefferson outpaces the next, can you zoom in just slightly here, Bradley? Outpaces the next highest paid receiver, A.J. Brown on the Eagles, who are always getting ahead of these contract situations, who got extended just a few months ago. It's a $3 million difference in terms of average per year. But you'll see that there's a massive difference in terms of full guarantees between Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown just got extended, but you also see again, those were the full guarantees. But for total guarantees, you see that Amon-Ra St. Brown is only guaranteed $77 million out of a contract that looks bigger than A.J. Brown's, but is not totally guaranteed in that way. I mean, and then you get full guarantees for A.J. Brown. There's differences there. Amon-Ra St. Brown has less full guarantees. So the point is just that a lot of this is BS, but Justin Jefferson's contract is pretty legit. And Tyreek Hill, he's 30 years old at this point, And he's at the back end of what is said to be an $120 million contract, but the entire back year is much higher and it's not guaranteed. So they could cut him at any point. Long story short, this is just meant to illustrate that the receiver market has exploded for the top players in the league. Now, Jalen Waddle also got extended this offseason, but and he's fairly high up there as well. But they're doing like 3 to 4 year deals so they can go back as the salary cap keeps going up and getting more contracts. But I'm happy to see any non-quarterback getting paid like this, because hopefully that changes some of the way that the league is going in terms of like every quarterback and their mother is getting a $40 million a year deal, a $45 million, $50 million deal. And I want that money to be more distributed amongst the skill position players and the offensive linemen, the defensive linemen, and the corners and all of that. The receiver market has exploded. And Justin Jefferson, I feel like this was the peg for the rest of the receiver market. I think Jamar Chase will exceed him slightly, but expect to see CeeDee Lamb pursue this. But after that, I don't know who the next guy coming up is going to be that exceeds this, because Devontae Adams is 32 years old and Cooper Kupp is 31, and Tyreek Hill is 30. The best receivers in the NFL right now, and I think it's Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and then it's everybody else. So they should be the standard, I think. So this may cap it for a little bit, but still, big deal.
But I think, regardless of the intent, and I don't care about intent in the sense that I want somebody like Justin Jefferson, who is like one of the most electrifying skill position players in the league, and also maybe in like the last like 10 years, honestly. Yeah. What happens here, which is I think smart of the Vikings to have done, and also which is what is smart of like as you were referencing with what the Eagles do a lot across a number of positions.
They also extend Devontae Smith in this offseason too, because they get ahead of this stuff instead of being like the Cowboys.
Exactly. Is that being in the Cowboys situation or in any number of teams who may have a wide receiver coming up potentially in the future. Like, also, I think Nico Collins got a nice extension for the Texans, which also was smart in the similar way of saying reward the guy for his great production, his synergy with your quarterback, and also so that you don't wait and risk any sort of not only just personal disgruntlement, but also a player having conversations with his agent, a la what I would imagine CeeDee Lamb is going to do, where it's already doing, where he's saying, how have they still not negotiated with me at all? AJ's under contract. Devontae Smith is under contract. Nico Collins is under contract. Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are. Tyreek's under contract?
Yeah, but it's
Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are under contract. How is it that guys on multiple teams, except for the Bengals, obviously, I mean, they're almost, unfortunately,
they're pretty damn cheap.
Maybe a little bit less than before, but they're notorious cheapskates.
Yeah.
How is it that I have not been extended or gotten a new contract at all yet? If I'm going in there, you haven't given me any goodwill to go off of. I'm saying give me Justin Jefferson's contract or more, and that's where we're starting our negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a horrible position for the Cowboys to have put themselves in, and to say nothing of the fact that they've done the exact same thing with their quarterback.
Not just their quarterback. With Micah freaking Parsons,
and to say
who hasn't been there for the offseason because of that reason.
To say nothing of who I would say arguably, I mean, Dak had a great year last year, but their most important player, full stop, is Micah Parsons.
Yeah, this is somehow turned into a Cowboys conversation, but I'm fine with it because that's kind of my end on the on commentary for Justin Jefferson. It's awesome for JJ McCarthy and for this offense, and there were apparently verified rumors that they were considering trading up to 5 with the Chargers to get ahead of the Giants for Malik Neighbors, because they had 2 first-round picks. They thought that Justin Jefferson wasn't going to be able to agree to their terms, and they're a very analytics-based front office with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, so that was their hope, I think, or that was something that they were attempting to do, which is like, I think, the much higher upside, higher risk version of what the damn Titans did, where they were too cheap to pay AJ Brown. That would be my counter to the Vikings. Like, good, you saved yourselves from yourself in that way, because it could have ended up disastrously for you if Justin Jefferson went somewhere else. But
yeah, right. Replacing AJ Brown, who became what AJ Brown is, with Treylon Burks and an aging, DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll see how everything works with Calvin Ridley and whatever. But I mean, the direct implications literally got that general manager fired from the Titans.
Oh well, would you rather have AJ Brown or Calvin Ridley and an aging D Hop?
Yeah, no, it's still Brown, 100%.
Still AJ
no
Brown.
question. Yeah. Absolutely.
But anyway, so the Cowboys, though, Dak Prescott has the most like insane amount of leverage because his cap number this year is a crazy, crazy number. So the leverage that he has is you can either extend him and spread out his cap hit, or you can let him go to the free agency next year,
where someone will absolutely sign him for the years and the money that he wants.
And he should get out of this stupid franchise that's run again. Like, it is the most valuable NFL franchise. It is run like a bottom 5 NFL franchise in the way that they actually like try to win and build a team. They're competitive every year, but they are often like riding highs that they can't sustain in the postseason, and that is structural. That is a problem. They have their three franchise cornerstones are in flux right now in terms of not being under contract because they are way too arrogant about their contract negotiations and drag these things out. Dak Prescott is, I don't think, going to be the Cowboys quarterback next year. I'm telling you, he's going to hit the market. The Raiders...
I was just going to say, I think he's probably in a Raiders uniform next year.
The Giants?
Yeah, right. And there could be a team... There's absolutely a number of teams that I think... Maybe even the Giants I wasn't even considering, which also makes me think that there are other teams that I may be not considering that would be like, we would do something to have Dak Prescott be our quarterback.
Yeah.
For no question.
Like, I mean, the problem is I don't see Joe Shane getting like taken for a ride in terms of like getting overpaying Dak Prescott.
Yeah, fair enough. Totally.
Do I see Tom Telesco?
Yes. Tom Telesco may have already agreed to this for it to happen 7 months later.
I mean, Dak Prescott next year, if it all falls apart, which it absolutely could, and then Micah Parsons, with Aaron Donald now retired, is the best defensive player in the NFL.
Yeah, agreed.
The best defensive player, more than Nick Bosa, more than the Bosa brothers who have availability issues, more than TJ Watt, who's a little bit more one-dimensional, even though he puts up better stats. He's asked to do less. He's more of just a traditional guy that's going to go after the quarterback in that way. Micah Parsons is playing linebacker. He's pass rushing. He's dropping back into freaking coverage.
And I think, and this is not to say that Myles Garrett did not deserve his defensive Player of the Year award.
Similar.
But even I think in some per snap metrics, Parsons is more effective.
It's insane.
Despite not having, the insane size, length, and speed that Myles Garrett had. I mean, Parsons is insanely fast. I just mean the combination. Like Myles Garrett's 280 pounds.
Yeah. If you treat your players like this, it's going to come back to bite you. Other 100%. Guys in the locker room see this.
No question.
Micah Parsons is the team. You're going to treat him this way and dick around and not extend him? I hope that he asked.
The Chiefs did not mess around when Chris Jones was like, I'm not going to come back. They made it work, and they won 2 consecutive Super Bowls.
Exactly. Exactly. I would not be shocked if the New York Giants are better than the damn Cowboys this year. This could be the year it all falls apart. That's all I'm saying. I said that last year.
Hope springs eternal.
Perhaps I was a little bit too early. But it fell apart in the playoffs because I don't believe the way that the team is constructed.
As it has the last 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so really quickly, we will get to this story because going viral today. We have this clip right by the. So Caitlin Clark is just all over the news, and I feel badly for her, to be honest, because I don't think she asked for this attention. However, I also feel very badly for the predominantly black NBA or WNBA players who just got treated like crap and continue to get treated like crap for their careers and did not get the attention that they deserved for many years for their play, for their, basically incredible competitiveness. Caitlin Clark has been targeted, really, it seems, because she's a rookie and this kind of stuff happens with some very physical off-ball play, including a foul that was just upgraded to a flagrant by one of the Chicago players whose name is escaping me right now.
Kennedy Carter.
So that has been making headlines because it was clearly a foul that was not a basketball play, as Clark said after the game. But the level of attention that is coming to this for a rookie player who is not having her best season, she's having trouble adjusting to the physicality of the WNBA. And she's had her moments, of course, but this was going to happen. I mean, she's not a big woman in the same way that some of these other women are. And I'll say this now, you go through, people say, and I've experienced it, kind of like 2 puberties sometimes as a woman, where your body changes in your mid-20s in terms of like your hips get wider, you get stronger. Like there are some just things that happen a little bit in your mid-20s that Caitlin Clark maybe hasn't gone through yet as just a person. And I'm not a professional athlete, but a lot of my friends and I experience this kind of stuff. So she's just not that big right now. She's getting bullied a little bit. And she's also getting targeted because of the outsized media attention that she has got. And this has caused this insane backlash by these white knight media figures like frickin' Pat McAfee, although he called her a white bitch on TV today in terms of, like, I guess it was a term of endearment, but it's like, this is the most prominent female athlete in the country, maybe in terms of popularity. Maybe you don't call her a bitch, a white bitch. So maybe he wants to get canceled and go somewhere else. But there's been this whole right-wing media ecosystem, again, that she did not ask for. Clark has not asked for this, but it's still happening. That is like, I'm going to defend her from these scary black ladies. Like, I'm going to protect her from all these violent black women. And then you go and you see these old scrums in the WNBA, and it's like, it's been physical all the time before this. That's part of the game, and also going after rookies is a part of the game in every sport. But because it's women, and because a white woman is getting kind of pushed around here, it triggers all the guys that were upset about what I had to say about the time that I got hit. Again, this is very inside baseball. But Ben Shapiro, when I told a story about a time when I had an encounter with a man on the subway who was having an episode, and he was jerking around, and I got hit in the face by accident because he was not in his right mind. And I said, I would not want someone to physically harm that person. I just moved away, and I went on with my day, even though I was uncomfortable at the time. This caused this outrage in right-wing media, which I was not expecting on my little podcast for that to go viral like that. And I see this same dynamic here with Caitlin Clark, oddly, because we're both white women. And there is this sort of like white knight patriarchal thing that a lot of men feel is their honor-bound duty to protect white women from scary people. And usually those people are non-white. So I don't know, like, this is a little bit of an aside, but I found this interaction interesting. Monica McNutt, who is my favorite, she does the radio for Knicks games. She also sometimes fills in for Clyde on Knicks broadcasts on TV, and then she also does post-game analysis for MSG, plus does ESPN coverage now. She's moving on up. She's phenomenal. She was on First Take today and confronted Stephen A. about, like, why are we covering this like this and you didn't cover it, the WNBA, before? And she makes some great points here.
We're talking about them maximizing their great potential. And because we bring that up and talk about what potentially might get in their way, which we do to men all the time, now we got to sit up here and watch every syllable. I resent that. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, so let me, I know we got to go to break. Welcome to the world of being a woman, Stephen A., and how you have to dance about your word choice and you have to please everybody and anybody as you navigate your being. We are talking about the world's greatest
How about being a black man?
being black.
Hold on 1 second.
Have you?
So this is what I'm saying to y'all, though, and I know we got to go to break, and we didn't necessarily go there. Maybe we should. There are so many layers in this conversation around the way that it's being discussed. When you no. And yes, Shannon, I know y'all are going to say and Stephen A., I know you just shared that you have talked about the WNBA on your program too. You guys may not have said everybody, but the prevailing sentiment for folks that are just joining the WNBA and following women's sports is unfair to the women of this league, to your point, who have laid the groundwork for Caitlin Clark to come in and now take it to the next level. That's all I'm saying in these conversations. Kennedy Carter's behavior is not indicative of the entire league. We are still talking about competition where you are allowed to get a little extra elbow in if you are competing and you do it within the parameters of the game. The game is physical. Caitlin is helping to grow the league. These women understand that, but she cannot be babied as a rookie. That's all I'm at.
All right.
Who talks about the WNBA? Who talks about women? Who talk about women's sports more than First Take?
Stephen A., respectfully, with your platform, you could have been doing this 3 years ago if you wanted to.
Wow.
All right. We got.
All right. Pause it for a second.
You guys.
So,
all right. Okay. She just made a point about intersectionality. She just made a point about all of these. We're gonna go back. I want to finish his outrage reaction there, because I'm a fan of Stephen A. as a New York-based carnival barker. I find it enjoyable when he doesn't know how to pronounce Pokemon names. I find it enjoyable when he goes on Knicks rants when I need a little bit of catharsis. I find it enjoyable when he clowns on Skip and all of that stuff. He's a jokester. He's funny as like a comedic presence in the way that maybe Trump would have been if he didn't end up being like a Republican freak psycho who ended up being like a massive racist and also a horrible thing for our country. And Stephen A. also has political ambitions. Just putting that a little bit over there.
But he's also, like, I think you're alluding to a little bit too, he's conservatively coded.
Oh yeah.
He's friendly with Mark Levin. He's appeared on, he's a radio host, Mark Levin, a Fox radio host, Mark Levin. He has described himself as a, avid listener of Levin's program. He's been a guest on Sean Hannity's show. He's more likely, he's someone I think who does not want to define himself by his political leanings, but based on public consumption, he leans right.
And she just gave this whole explanation of how difficult it is to be a woman. And he said, well, how about to be a black man? 100% true. I would never say that as a white woman, my experience going through life is harder than being a black man in this country. There's zero anecdotal experience that would back that up. There's zero statistical evidence that would back that up. I have immense privilege, like way more than black men in this country, more than black women. But I'm not the one that's saying this to Stephen A. Monica McNutt, as a black woman, is saying it, who is in this business, who's played ball herself on the college level, who is like trying to make a point about the like intersectional inequities in society as it relates to the sport that she covers. And he turns and just makes it about himself and disregards and her criticism of First Take and disregards everything she said there. Can we go back 20 seconds?
I also just want to say this is very out of left field. I'm just curious if you've seen it because it kind of reminds me of this. Have you seen the movie Desperately Seeking Susan?
No.
It's with Madonna and Rosanna Arquette.
No, I haven't, but I've heard of it.
I just watched it with my mom and my wife last night.
My wife.
And at the end of the movie, like basically, it's kind of just like a comedy of errors, like misplaced identity. Basically, Madonna and Rosanna Arquette get confused for each other. A movie like this would be completely solved with an iPhone, but it was made in 1985.
Yeah.
Her husband finally tracks her down, Rosanna Arquette, and says, "Why did you leave? Why did you let this happen?" And she basically is like, "I'm really disaffected as a suburban housewife, and I fantasized about other people's lives in the personal sections of the newspaper, and that's why I did. That's why I left, and that's why I was feeling disillusioned." And his response is, "Are you a lesbian?
Yeah.
Do you do drugs?"
That's exactly
right. It's like Monica McNutt makes literally the entire point as to why she is frustrated with this discourse, why it is much more nuanced for her being a black woman who has played sports, a black woman who has had more literacy and more experience with the WNBA. And Stephen A. Smith is like, "Have you watched my TV show?"
Yeah.
Like,
do you even watch First Take, bro?
And you'll see he gets a little more into
He gets
that as
worse.
well.
All right, go back just a little because I want the tail end of her explanation here just to highlight his insane reaction.
Stephen A., respectfully, with your platform, you could have been doing this 3 years ago.
No, back even more.
You cannot be babied as a rookie. That's all I'm at.
All right.
Who talks about the WNBA? Who talks about women? Who talk about women's sports more than First Take?
Stephen A., respectfully, with your platform, you could have been doing this 3 years ago if you wanted to.
Wow.
All right, we gotta go. You guys.
So did you say
You're my guy, but
who does more than
Stephen
us?
A., I'm talking to you.
Wow.
Don't do that. I'm talking to you about the power that you have.
Okay.
I'm talking to you.
Okay.
All right, let's.
I got it.
You're my guy, but
I
I'm
got
talking
it.
to
He's
you.
mad.
Guys, I really appreciate
you're my girl, but you've missed a lot of episodes of First Take. You missed a lot.
Stephen A.,
Guys.
3 years ago,
I'll leave
you
it
would
at
not
that.
talk about the
Go
W
ahead,
at this
Mama.
level. Don't do that.
Guys.
Nobody was, Monica. You making Stephen A.'s point, Monica. Monica, you
gentlemen,
making
please
Stephen
let
A.'s
me do my
point.
job. Please let me do my job. We've gone for 40 minutes straight. It was a riveting discussion. I have to get in the
Jesus.
commercial break.
Stephen A., I've never seen him genuinely and not performatively pissed. And you know what it took?
And not just pissed, stunned into silence.
Good for Monica. She is an up-and-comer in this industry, and ESPN is a monopolistic juggernaut. He has probably never been called out in earnest in any real way outside of the theater of the show on his program in I don't know how long. I mean, they bring on clowns like the frickin', LeVar Balls of the world for them to have fun with, and I still get great enjoyment out of their banter. I still go back to him going on and claiming he could beat Michael Jordan one-on-one and enjoy Stephen A's just complete bewilderment. It's fun. That's what it's for. It's if you take these people seriously for sports analysis, don't take us seriously, but definitely don't take ESPN seriously. Read writers. Listen to more in-depth podcasts on this. But the fact that he got that mad because she said something that's objectively true. I mean, I don't need to go back and watch First Take to know that they weren't covering the WNBA
It is
in the same
objectively
way.
true. We don't need, as you're saying, we don't need to look through. We don't need to look through Google search analytics to find whether or not Stephen A. was mentioning WNBA topics or players more in 2021 than he is now. We know it to be true. The focus on women's basketball reached an inflection point specifically in this NCAA tournament, even relative to last year's when LSU beat Iowa.
Yeah.
That the fact that Caitlin Clark's team made it to the finals, and then immediately after she was drafted first overall and immediately thrust into a professional environment, has made it so that more and more people who have either never dabbled into the WNBA whatsoever and now have opinions on it, or very minimally, or people like Stephen A. Smith, who literally gets paid to cover professional sports, is now doing so more than he ever has before, and is now either feeling slightly remorseful about it or doesn't actually want to own up to the fact that he wasn't covering this before, because he wasn't.
He wasn't. And that's the point is what kind of attention do we want on the WNBA? Do we want these women to be treated like professionals, like the tops of their sport, like competitors who don't need to be shrinking violets to be able to get sympathy? They don't need to look a certain way. They don't need to look like Caitlin Clark to get your attention. That's what people are upset about, right? And Clark never asked for this. I want to reiterate it. She's been a phenomenal, jolt of lightning for women's sports in this way. But does the attention have to be all about oh, poor Caitlin, these scary black women are coming for her? Because it's sports have a predominantly male fan base, and there are a lot of racist men that watch that, and that's the takeaway that they want. ESPN has to be more responsible in their coverage to make sure that they're not doing that, and that's what Monica is saying as an employee of ESPN, and he can't take the heat.
And this is also discursively why it's been so, I would say, odious and I'm not trying to both sides this, I more just mean the fact that the discourse is far more annoying and far more irritating than anything Caitlin Clark has actually literally said out loud. there was a dispatch from one of the first Indiana Fever games, from one of the websites I talk about all the time on the show, Defector.com.
Good job, Defector.
Maythree and Tharaman, who is a big WNBA fan on their site, went to a Fever game. Literally, every single question Caitlin Clark was being asked in the post-game or pre-game huddle from the media was, you just started out your career after the NCAA women's final. What is that like for you as a rookie, especially being in your position? And literally, every single answer Caitlin Clark was given is like, it's fine, it's normal. Every single rookie in the WNBA has also experienced this. This is the timeline. I am not any different from anybody else just because I am who I am. It is literally the same timeline that every single other WNBA player has gone through to become a rookie in this league. She is not driving this. She's not literally coming out here and saying, because I am white, I am being treated differently. That's what freaks like Pat McAfee are doing. That's what or on the other end of it, it's either people, I think, where it can be grading on both ends of this dialogue, and it doesn't skew. It's not a left-right issue. It's more just like it is like a nebulous sort of weird culture war issue. Where on one end, I think there are some legacy WNBA viewers who, for no fault of their own, I sort of understand where they're coming from, can kind of telegraph it as almost being like, it's a public service to watch the WNBA. It's like a social justice bona fide to watch the WNBA, which, whether it is or not, is not what I'm talking about. I'm saying performing that as if performing that and expressing that as if it is.
As if it's social activism.
It's not social activism to watch the WNBA.
That's condescending.
Like watch the WNBA because it's an entertaining league with entertaining players, and it has been for 20 years, but we just don't watch it because it's women playing basketball. And I don't say that as my own personal opinion. I'm saying that as like factually, when you look at the viewership numbers, when you look at how it's been talked about, this league was a running joke for Michael Chan SNL and for every late night host for years. Despite how talented the women in this league are, despite how incredible they are at the game that they play, and despite there being actual stakes to it, despite being a literal 12-team league that until now was flying commercial, it's almost more impressive that it was entertaining, despite how limited their options were. And on the other end of it, there are these people who are saying, look at what Caitlin Clark did for your league. You should be thanking her instead of giving her a hard hip check foul. You should be bowing. You should be at her feet, giving her laurels. You should be thanking her for making your sorry profession relevant. And as if any competitor in any other league would ever be expected to do that. As if when Patrick Beverley had a dirty play and pushed Chris Paul in the back, he shouldn't have done that. It was a horrible thing to do. He was punished for it. No one's saying Chris Paul is a Hall of Famer. How dare you treat him that way? He's in State Farm commercials. Don't you think he expands the revenue of the league? How dare you?
Let's actually, I think a better example for her phenomenon is what Tiger did for golf.
Yes. Right.
Was Tiger getting this treatment in the same way that she's being asked in the same way? I mean, everyone recognized it was a phenomenon without having to like insert their own freaking weird I don't know, impulse. It's not the right word, but weird like
people graphing on their own personal feelings onto
this situation.
When Caitlin Clark is not exhibiting anything to react to.
Right.
Everyone's reacting to each other reacting.
Exactly. And I know that there was a lot of racial animus towards Tiger in the golf world. I'm not trying to take away from that whatsoever. But the point is just in terms of like who's as transformative to building up a sport into something that was more marginal into what it is now. The treatment that he got was like, this is a frickin' prodigy god on earth. And her level of play isn't what he was exhibiting, but it took him some time to ramp up, right? Until he was winning all of those majors. It's not a perfect analogy. But the point is just that, yes, because it's women, because it's a white woman, because there is this, I think, way that we've constructed masculinity in this society that is really built upon notions of protecting women, protecting certain kinds of women from certain kinds of people. Need I remind folks about Emmett Till and all of the other ways that white men felt like they needed to protect white women from scary black people throughout our history, and how they kind of make that the defining factor of their masculinity. That is all the history that is undergirding this story. And again, it's nothing that Caitlin Clark asked for. So let's have that perspective when rooting for her or watching her career, but watching all the other women that make this league what it is. And honestly, players in the league also try to have that perspective, I think. So.
And to your, just one last quick thing to your point on Tiger Woods. Reporters, when they were talking to Tiger Woods, literally were like, don't you think you're coming off a little bit arrogant that you think you're going to win tournaments?
There you go.
No one was literally saying, well, why don't you hey, legacy golf reporter, why don't you shut the fuck up? Because Tiger Woods is a young black lightning rod for the sport who's going to expand the sport and make it one of the make their Grand Slam tournaments appointment viewing for millions of people every year. Don't ask him those questions. No one was saying that.
Yeah.
No one was saying you should be literally groveling on at Tiger's feet for being Tiger Woods. When people were heavily scrutinizing and criticizing and microaggressing, for lack of a better verb, Serena and Venus Williams, no one was saying, look at what she's going to do for the sport. Look at what they're revolutionizing tennis. Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
These things aren't happening that way. And obviously, there's racial coding to that as well.
Of course.
No question.
I mean, Serena maybe was a better example for my situation just because of you could she revolutionized women's tennis 100%.
Absolutely.
And the treatment that she got from the press was extremely adversarial and racist.
And all that is to say, it's that the reason why I'm bringing any of that up is because there's this on the other end of the spectrum of the thing I was describing, not like the sort of like watching WNBA as social justice, the other side of it being as if Caitlin Clark requires this level of defense.
Yeah.
She doesn't need defending. She doesn't need the help of people like Pat McAfee saying, forget about the rest of this rookie class, who, by the way, are all black women, or including Camila Cardozo, South American. All we're talking about actually is that white bitch in Indiana. Somehow, in your caping, your white knighting for this woman who does not need your protection in that way, you're still calling her a white bitch.
Yeah, exactly. So even then, they can't hide the misogyny.
No.
And that's what Monica McNutt was trying to say, Stephen A. These are all intersectional. They're all forms of domination and subjugation. And let's try to keep that in mind and not replicate them, okay? Let's read some IMs and get out of here.
Sorry,
Bradley.
I didn't mean to black out.
Oh, it's all right. You've had a long weekend, as have I.
I sure have.
And this felt better to talk about than some of the other topics that we were tasked with talking about. Dan from Columbus, Stephen A. has been dead to me since he repeatedly mispronounced the Prince of Sion's name during a weird segment where he responded to tweets. Well, I may have mispronounced it there. I wouldn't take it personally. That's kind of his thing. We'll see. But fair enough. J-Man J's great show as always. I agree the Panthers should be favored. I'm hoping my Oilers got the chance, and I'm picking them in 6 anyway. Was wondering if I could call in tomorrow to Majority Report to get a shofar for my father and uncle. 709 area code, left is best. All right, we will flag it. Jobby Boonier says, begging for the triple bang. Are we not doing phrasing anymore? Oh, God, I didn't even realize that I said that. Shit. Fatal Fury 507. How big of a drop-off would NFL contracts be if it was all guaranteed? Different levels of guarantees, just another level of NFL absurdity. Yeah, that's not happening anytime soon. Like, the levels of pro-ownership, contract manipulation in the NFL versus the NBA is staggering, in part because the injury risks are higher in the NFL substantially, and they also vary from position to position. So you'll see much more guarantees in a quarterback or a wide receiver contract or a corner contract, right? Less contact, less when you're further away from the line of scrimmage. You're less likely to be injured versus a running back contract or a defensive lineman contract or a linebacker contract, right? So we can't even get rid of the 5th-year option, which is a way for teams to squat on players. For people that don't realize, a rookie contract has a 5th-year option for first-round picks. You can pick up a 5th-year option to extend a guy's rookie contract for 5 more years, meaning keeping them on the cheap for a 5th year. And then after that 5th year, you have the option to franchise tag that player, which also keeps them off the market from getting their full value when going to free agency. Then we're talking about how they don't guarantee contracts. Those are like 3 just separate little things. And they can tag them a second time too. And that means that's if they tag them, if a first-round player with a 5th-year option picked up and then 1 franchise tag, that means 6 years under a below market level contract for their services. They also have the ability to tag them a second time. Those tags are fully guaranteed, but that doesn't mean that they have long-term security. So this is just this is a whole different universe, honestly, in terms of what we're talking about with contracts. Like the NHL, I just was talking about with their restrictive policies. Yes, more guys have to go into restricted free agency and arbitration, which is also anti-player, but it is at the very least fully guaranteed contracts. Lower contracts, fully guaranteed contracts. It could be Ninja says, do y'all take calls? Show is too good and takes too spicy to stay silent. Yes, we sometimes do, but sometimes I forget and I'm sad. So I want to wrap up the show. Hank Aaron 715 said, off topic, but I'm curious to see where they put Metro Atlanta's NHL stadium. It could be put in the same county as Atlanta. The other potential county already said they're willing to pay nearly $400 for it if an NHL team commits. If the county with Atlanta foots the bill while also funding Cop City, they'll have even less of an excuse than the recent water crisis. I think you meant 400 billion or 400 million? We'll see. Will from Indiana, it seems like a great time to remind people that ESVN is better than ESPN. I don't know about that. I honestly thought that the Greg Doyle presser incident was going to be a cautionary tale about male sports reporters being weird around female athletes, and I was clearly wrong. Maybe they'll try to save face and actually promote the WNBA in a healthier way, but we shall see. Velvet, F Boston sports in general, right? Yes, Velvet. Niall from Trinidad, ESPN First Take has never did a segment about the WNBA. I wouldn't be shocked if that were the case. Angela from Alberta, those years was the PWHL's first year, and they sold out almost every game. I find it annoying when men don't cover women's sports. I've been desperate for professional women's hockey for years, and I was upset by the failure of the WNHL. These games have been awesome. I've been seeing some highlights, not comfortable enough to comment on it yet, but I should do a little bit more of a deep dive. And the final I am of the day, Tom Lofink, happy Monday. Commiserations about the Rangers, Emma, and the Knicks. In rugby, the league, which contained the team I support, has ended its regular season, and my team finished 15th out of 16th. Ouch. And one of our regional rivals, the Ospreys, qualified for the playoffs despite having a 2% before the news. In sadder news, English former Rugby 13s player Rob Burrow passed away yesterday, aged 41, from motor neuron disease. I'm so sorry to hear that, Tom. That is sad news. Have a great rest of your day, guys. We will see you on Monday on the other side of a few NBA Finals games and one, I believe, NHL Finals game. See you then.
Bye-bye.